Level 1. The selection. Nobody told you it would be like this. You enlisted at 19 because the army was the only institution in your state that didn't ask you to betray something. Your father drove a water delivery truck. Your mother taught 3rd grade in a school with no windows. You were not running from poverty. You were running toward something that felt like purpose, and the uniform gave you a shape to pour that feeling into. 3 years in conventional infantry. Deployments to Michoacán, to Tamaulipas, to Guerrero. You learned what the war looked like from a truck window and from behind a cordon, and from the faces of the people who watched you pass without expression, unsure whether you were the problem or a slightly different version of the same problem. You did your job. You followed orders. You kept your opinions inside your chest where nobody could use them. Then the officer comes to you with a transfer form. He doesn't explain much. He says there is a unit. He says the training is difficult. He says the mission is real. He looks at you the way someone looks at a tool they think might be sharp enough for a specific cut. You sign the form because you came here to be useful, and this is the most serious anyone has ever been about using you. They take you north, a base you've never heard of. Walls, dust, the kind of flat institutional silence that means something important happens here and the importance is classified. There are 41 other candidates in the first formation. You count them because counting is already becoming a habit. By day 3, there are 36. By day 7, 29. Not because anyone quits dramatically. They just disappear from the formation, and their bunk is stripped by morning, and nobody talks about it because there is nothing to say. The physical selection is brutal in a specific way that goes beyond fitness. They don't just want to know if your body can take it. They want to know if your mind stays organized when your body is failing. They want to know if you make rational decisions at hour 72 of no sleep with a 50-kilo pack and an instructor screaming contradictory instructions 6 inches from your face. They want to know the specific ratio of your stubbornness to your intelligence, because too much stubbornness without intelligence gets operators killed. And too much intelligence without stubbornness produces men who find reasons to stop. You find out your ratio on day 11. It's the water obstacle. 40 meters of muddy canal, body armor on, rifle above your head, 41-degree heat pressing down from a sky with no mercy. The man in front of you goes under and doesn't come back up immediately. And in the 4 seconds it takes the instructor to pull him out, you make a calculation that isn't really a calculation at all. It's just your feet moving forward into the water. You make the crossing. You don't remember thinking about it. The selection officer checks your name on a clipboard 3 weeks later. He doesn't congratulate you. He tells you to get your gear and follow him. You follow him across a compound to a different building with different locks and different guards, and when the door closes behind you, the world you came from is gone. Welcome to the Cuerpo de Fuerzas Especiales. They don't say it like it's something to celebrate. They say it like it's a fact about the kind of work that's waiting. Level 2. The training that changes your eyes. The first 6 months are not about making you faster or stronger, although that happens too. They are about changing the way you see. You learn close-quarters battle in a kill house built to spec. Concrete rooms, steel doors, rubber-coated walls that swallow live rounds without sending them back. You enter rooms in combinations of 2 and 4, stacking, breaching, clearing, every movement choreographed with a precision that eventually stops being choreography and becomes instinct, becomes the body's own language for moving through lethal space without dying in it. You fire thousands of rounds in there. Your ears ring for months. You learn that the ringing is just background now, just the constant note that this life plays underneath everything else. You learn surveillance, both running it and detecting it. You walk markets in Monterrey and Guadalajara as part of exercises, identifying surveillance teams your instructors have placed without briefing you on their numbers. You learn to read the difference between a person who is watching and a person who is just existing in a space. It's a difference in posture, in eye movement, in the quality of attention. Once you can see it, you cannot stop seeing it. You walk into a restaurant with your family on a Saturday, and you've catalogued every exit and assessed every person in the room before you've sat down, and your wife asks why you look tired, and you don't know how to explain that you're not tired, you're just always working now. You learn human basics, how to develop sources in hostile environments, how to build trust with informants who are terrified and whose information is often unreliable, and whose lives depend on your ability to keep their identities protected inside a system where corruption has penetrated deep enough that you cannot always be certain who in your own chain of command is compromised. That last part isn't covered in the official curriculum. You learn it from an instructor who was in GAFE in the late 90s, who speaks carefully and looks at walls when he talks, who tells you once, the most dangerous man in any operation is not the cartel. It's the man beside you that you haven't verified. You spend 3 weeks on maritime insertion, Zodiac approaches, combat diving, night landings on coastline in Veracruz and Sinaloa and the Pacific coast of Guerrero. The ocean doesn't care about your training. The ocean tries to kill you the same way it tries to kill everything. And the exercise is learning to complete a mission, while something vast and indifferent is attempting to remove you from the equation. You pass. By the end of the training cycle, you are a different person in a technical sense. Your reaction times have changed. Your threat assessment runs continuously and unconsciously now, a background process you didn't install and can't uninstall. You are more capable and less easy. That's the accurate description. You are harder to kill and harder to live beside. They issue you a balaclava. Black. Standard issue. It smells like factory plastic when you first put it on. The instructor tells you that you will wear it on all operations from this point forward. He tells you that your face is now a liability. He tells you that the men you will hunt have money to spend on finding out who you are and where your family lives and what your daughter looks like on the way to school. He says this without drama, the way a doctor says a diagnosis. This is the condition. These are the parameters. You put on the mask and look in the mirror, and the person looking back has no identity the enemy can use. You keep the mask on. Level 3. The Sicario Hunter. Your first real deployment is Tamaulipas. The Gulf Cartel and the Zetas have been at war over this territory for 3 years. The numbers are abstract until you're standing in them. 43 bodies discovered in clandestine graves outside Ciudad Mier in 1 month. Mass displacement. Entire towns evacuated. The state police compromised at a level that makes coordination with them a tactical decision, not an assumption. You coordinate with them when you have to, and you give them nothing operational when you can avoid it. That calculation is never comfortable. It is always correct. Your unit operates at night. The darkness is yours by training and theirs by habit, and the difference is that you have equipment they don't. Nods that turn the black streets of Reynosa into a green world of thermal outlines and building geometry. You know what's behind the wall before you go through it. Sometimes, the target packages come from intelligence compiled over weeks. Humint from sources you never meet. SIGINT intercepts that the intelligence section has analyzed and triangulated into an address and a time frame, and a level of confidence that is never as high as you'd want and never low enough to justify inaction. You study the packages in a room with no windows. Target, known associates, known routes, known vehicles, known weapons, known reaction patterns. The analyst presents this information as a profile, and you read it as a human being you are about to meet under circumstances that will not be gentle for either of you. The raid on the stash house in Reynosa takes 11 minutes, 4 operators on the breach team. 2 covering the exterior. You go in second through the primary door, which is steel reinforced, and comes off the frame on the second charge. The hallway is dark. Your nods show a body heat signature at the end of it. You move. The man at the end of the hallway is reaching for something at the moment you make contact. What happens next takes less than 2 seconds and is over. You clear 3 more rooms. You find a woman and 2 children in the back bedroom. They are alive. The children are under the bed. You step back from the doorway and let the female interpreter who deployed with you take the lead. She speaks quietly. The children come out. You find the product: 40 kilos of methamphetamine in a cooler. 3 assault rifles, a ledger with names and numbers that your intelligence section will spend 3 weeks translating into actionable information. The target is in custody. The target does not look like a monster. He looks like a man in his 30s in a white t-shirt who made a specific set of decisions over a specific number of years and is now experiencing the arithmetic of those decisions in a hallway in Reynosa at 2 in the morning. You document everything. You photograph everything. You hand the target to the federal police liaison who was waiting outside, and you watch him loaded into a vehicle, and you calculate, based on the evidence you've accumulated about how these transfers end, the probability that he will be prosecuted successfully. You don't share that calculation with anyone because sharing it serves no operational purpose. You get back on the helicopter. You have another package briefing at 0600. Level 4. The weight of the mask. 6 months in, your wife calls you while you're on base. She doesn't know where the base is. She doesn't know what you do there specifically. She knows you are in the military, that you are in a specialized unit, that you can't tell her where you are or when you'll be back, and that when you do come home you will be quiet for the first 2 days in a way that she has learned to interpret as a kind of decompression that requires patience and not questions. She is a person of remarkable patience, and you are aware that this patience is a resource with a finite supply that you are drawing down faster than either of you acknowledges. She tells you about your son. He asked where you were. She told him you were working to keep people safe. He thought about this and then asked if you were like a superhero. She tells you this story, and there is a quality to her voice that is not quite humor and not quite sadness, but is located precisely in the space between them where most of what is true about this life lives. You tell her you'll be home soon. This is not a lie because you genuinely don't know when you'll be home, so soon is technically possible. You hang up and sit with the phone in your hand in the equipment room, and the equipment room smells like gun oil and sweat and the particular dusty heat of northern Mexico in July, and you sit there for 3 minutes, which is the amount of time you have allocated to this before you have to be somewhere else. The mask does something to you that nobody warned you about specifically. It's not just tactical protection, although it is that. It is a separation. When you put it on, you become something that has no name and no address and no son who wants to know if you're a superhero. You become a function. And functions are easier to maintain under fire than people are. This is useful. This is also a problem that you will be managing for the rest of your career and possibly longer. You've been on 17 operations in 6 months. 13 resulted in arrests. 3 resulted in engagements. 1 resulted in a funeral for a man from Sonora who had been in the unit for 4 years and whose face you had never seen unmasked and whose name you knew only by his call sign. The funeral was attended by men in civilian clothes who stood at the back and said nothing and left before the family approached the casket. You were one of those men. You didn't know his real name until the chaplain said it. You filed it away in the compartment where you file things that are true but that you cannot think about during operational hours, because operational hours require your full attention, and your full attention is the difference between coming home and being the person they call someone else to notify. Level 5. The Ghost. The CJNG starts putting prices on operators' heads in Jalisco, not generically, specifically. They identify unit affiliation, rank estimates, vehicle types, base locations approximate enough to be actionable. This intelligence comes from somewhere inside the system. You knew this was possible. You did not know how systematic it was until the intelligence brief where your unit commander lays out what they've recovered from a captured plaza boss's phone. There are photographs. Some of them are of men you recognize by their gait and their gear, even with their faces masked. You change your route to base for the first time and do it again 2 days later and again a week after that. You randomize the times you call your wife. You tell her, without explaining why, not to put your son in photographs on social media. She doesn't ask why. She has learned that the explanations she can get are incomplete, and the complete ones she can't have, and that the gap between those two categories is where you live. You start carrying off duty. This was optional before. Now it is not optional. You are aware that this changes something about civilian life, that the presence of a weapon creates a persistent calculation that reorganizes how you move through public space, which restaurants you sit in and where you sit in them, which streets you walk and at what hour, which people around you merit a second look and which do not. You are also aware that this hypervigilance, this continuous low-grade combat readiness, is not psychologically free. It costs something every day. The bill hasn't come due in a way you can measure yet. Your unit takes down a training camp in Chihuahua. The camp is professional in a way that resets your calibration of the threat. 20 men. Obstacle course. Tactical communications equipment. Weapons ranging from AK variants to an M2. Browning that someone acquired through channels your intelligence section is still tracing. Ballistic vests. Medical supplies. This is not a group of criminals who picked up rifles. This is a paramilitary force trained by someone with military background and equipped with resources that exceed what some standing armies can field. You find training materials, printed documents on small unit tactics, hand-drawn diagrams of government building layouts in 3 different state capitals. Photographs of federal police officers, some identified with names and home addresses. You photograph everything and submit it. 2 days later, you receive a restricted intelligence summary that tells you, in the careful language of analytical products, that the organization has achieved a level of military sophistication that requires a corresponding adjustment in operational planning. What the document means, translated from its careful language into the operational reality you live in, is this. They are getting better at this faster than the institutions fighting them are getting better at it. The money is infinite. The recruitment pool is enormous. And some of the men who trained them used to be men like you. You know that. You sit with it. Level 6. Culiacan. October 2019. The city locks down. The federal government has authorized the capture of Ovidio Guzman Lopez in a residential neighborhood. Your unit is on a support element standing by outside a perimeter that is, within 40 minutes of the initial breach, no longer a perimeter. It's a contested urban zone. The Sinaloa cartel mobilizes within minutes. Not a few armed men, convoys, armored trucks, 50 caliber mounted weapons, roadblocks across the entire city, civilian vehicles seized and used as obstacles, fires set to create confusion. Gunfire across multiple simultaneous contact points designed to disperse the security response. Families barricaded in homes, gas stations burning, the city of 700,000 people frozen by an organization that activated faster and with more coordination than any conventional adversary you've trained to fight. You stand at your position and watch a Mexican state functionally surrender a piece of its sovereign territory in real time. The order comes down to release the target, to stand down, to let the convoy through. You hear this in your earpiece, and the silence that follows it in the formation around you is a specific kind of silence, not the silence of agreement. The silence of men who have been given information they don't know how to process. You follow the order. You always follow the order. That's what separates you from the men on the other side of the roadblock, and that separation matters even when following. The order feels like swallowing something jagged. That night in the safe house, nobody talks about what happened. You eat. You clean your weapons. You sleep. These are the actions available to you, and you perform them. Level 7. The line that doesn't move. There are things you won't do. The government has not asked you to do them. Your commander has not asked you to do them. But you know they exist as possibilities in this war. You know about the units that have crossed lines. You've read the human rights reports. You know about the enforced disappearances, about bodies that turned up with signs inconsistent with combat, about intelligence obtained through methods the law prohibits, and that certain officers justified with the same logic every person uses when they decide the rules don't apply to their specific situation. You have a line. You know where it is because you drew it deliberately, in a specific moment of a specific operation, when you were standing in a room with a prisoner who had information that would have saved lives and whose willingness to provide it was insufficient, and where a man from a different unit suggested a method you recognized as the beginning of something that does not end well for anyone involved. You said no. Quietly. Without drama. The way you say things you mean completely. The man from the other unit looked at you with an expression that contained several things simultaneously. You met his eyes and held them until he looked away. You got the information through other means. It took longer. The operation proceeded. You have not crossed that line. You are aware this is a choice and not a given. The war creates conditions where the line becomes harder to see, where exhaustion and anger and the accumulated weight of what you've witnessed erodes the clarity that drew it. You are aware of this because you have watched it happen to others, and you monitor yourself for it the way you monitor a wound for infection. Regularly. Honestly. Without the comfort of assuming it can't happen to you. That vigilance is also part of the job. Nobody put it in the training curriculum, but it is the most important thing you maintain. Level 8. The mask you carry home. You come home. It's a Tuesday afternoon. Your son is at school. Your wife is in the kitchen making something that fills the house with a smell so specific to home that it functions as a chemical anchor to the person you are here, in this house, in this life, as opposed to the person you are out there. You sit at the kitchen table and she brings you coffee, and the two of you are quiet for a while. She doesn't ask how it was. She knows the contours of what she's allowed to know, and she's made her peace with the boundary, mostly. You look at her and you think, with a clarity that operations never permit, that she is doing something harder than what you do. You are trained for your part. She is not trained for hers. She built her capacity for this by living it. That is a different kind of strength. Your son comes home at 3:15. He drops his backpack on the floor, which he has been told not to do, and runs to you and hits you in the chest with a hug. You close both arms around him and hold him for a moment that runs slightly longer than he expects, long enough that he squirms a little, and you let him go. He tells you about something that happened at school. A friend. A game. Something funny. You listen. You actually listen. Without analyzing. Without cataloging. Without calculating exit routes. Just listening to your son talk about something that matters to him. You can do this. It takes effort, but you can do it. You've been practicing. The mask is in a bag in the hall closet. Not literally, although literally it is also there. Cleaned and folded and waiting. The other mask, the operational one, the one made of compartmentalization and threat assessment, and the specific density of a man who has done what you've done and filed the paperwork and moved on, that mask you take off slower. It comes off over days. Your wife knows the timeline. She gives you those days. The war is still happening. Right now, somewhere in Sinaloa or Tamaulipas or Guanajuato, something is happening that will require a response. There is a target package being built. There is a helicopter being fueled. There is a man in a mask stacking outside a door in the dark, heart rate elevated, weapon up, breathing through the part of the brain that training installed for exactly this purpose. That man will be you again soon. But right now, you are here, at a kitchen table in a city whose name you will not say aloud, with your son telling you something about a game, and you are listening. You are present. That is the hardest part of this job. That is also the only part that makes the rest of it survivable.